Could one of these 8 herpes viruses be the cause of your mystery symptoms, your chronic illness, your autoimmune, your fibromyalgia, your dysautonomia, all the craziness that's going on? The answer is probably yes. So here's the trickiest thing. Number one, I'm going to teach you what the different herpes viruses are because a lot of people don't understand there's so many and what they can do in your body. But more and more and more, we're researching and figuring out that these types of viruses, because they live in our body long term, they're actually linked to several different chronic illnesses and chronic symptoms, even when you're not in a flare. This is what really confuses people. So I'm going to take you through what each of one of them are. And also each one has a little bit of a different way that it can respond in the body. So I'm going to teach you how to look for those things and then also start giving you some tips if you do have one or sometimes several of these viruses, right? A lot of people have more than one of them, how it's affecting you long-term and what you can start doing to protect yourself from the long-term chronic illnesses. So let's get into some of the education pieces of it first. I want to teach you what the 8 are and then give you a little bit of context what they're doing in your body. So HSV1 is cold sores, right? So herpes simplex virus is what we're talking about. Cold sores is HSV1. Now, obviously cold sores are annoying. They're embarrassing. You don't like them. You probably already noticed they come on more when you're stressed or when you're already sick or sometimes more around your cycle. You can tell, right, that these outbreaks are more connected to when your body is feeling out of whack. But what you might not realize, and I actually pulled up lists for these because there's so many more that I can even remember, what you might not even realize is that even when you don't have a cold sore, that virus is still in your body. And this goes with all of the different herpes viruses we're going to talk about. They live in certain cells of your body and they become stronger and they replicate before the outbreak happens. And while they're doing that inside your body, they're creating other imbalances, which is why some of these symptoms go so long without ever being connected to one of these viruses, because you're getting the wonky symptoms even when you don't feel like you're in a viral flare. This is what I need you to understand. It's not about the flare or the outbreak. It's about how long-term they make changes in your body. So here are some of the ways that the HSV1 could affect your body, even when you're not having a cold sore. Obviously, the blisters are sign one that it's active, but it can also create, when you're not in a flare, facial pain. It's really connected to TMJ pain. It can create dizziness and ringing in the ears because HSV1 really gets stuck primarily in those cranial nerves in your head, an off-balance feeling. We see HSV1 a lot in people who have headaches and migraines. If you're a headache and a migraine sufferer, between HSV1, and we'll teach you these other ones, HSV4 and HSV6, I find that almost everyone who is a chronic migraine sufferer has one of those types of herpes viruses. This is a big deal. So if you know you get cold sores, but you also get migraines, they could be coming from the same thing. This should be big news for you, right? Like this is a big deal. So any of that, brain fog, but especially during flares, you might notice before you get a cold sore for a day or two before you feel run down, you feel a little extra brain foggy, but that can happen even without the cold sore coming up. You might have days or weeks that you feel like there's just a cloud in your head. That's the virus creating some inflammation in those cranial nerves. That's a big one. It is linked to trigeminal neuralgia. If you don't know what that is, it's really intense facial pain. But so often I see people who have trigeminal neuralgia who have never been tested for these herpes viruses, and they really are linked. So especially if you have any of those, I say like vestibular, like balance or dizziness, any pain in your head, headaches, pain in your face, TMJ, burning sensations, burning mouth syndrome has also been linked to having HSV1. Start thinking like this could be viral related, and that goes far beyond just the cold sore. So that's HSV1. HSV2 is your genital herpes. This is one that affects the nerve roots in our lower body primarily, but it can also, again, even when you're not in an outbreak, you're not in a flare, it can create long-term pain in your low back and your pelvis. It can create burning pain in your leg and down your leg. A lot of times when you're diagnosed with sciatica, it's actually viral irritation, which is why sometimes you're doing the exercises or maybe you're seeing a chiropractor, you're trying to fix it, and it's not feeling a whole lot better. It's because it's irritated by a virus. It's not just structural, or maybe it's the combination of the two. Definitely fatigue, big time fatigue with HSV2. Again, even not in a flare. So if you know you have HSV2, if you've had outbreaks before, but you have this lingering fatigue, maybe you feel like you might have chronic fatigue syndrome, that is connected to HSV2 as well. And then it's really highly connected to your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is the one that regulates anxiety, mood, depression. If you've ever heard me describe what a nervous system flare feels like that out of body experience where you're like, everything feels off. Maybe there's buzzing in your head. Maybe you get a vibration sensation in your body that just makes you feel, the best way to describe it, people say it just makes you feel like yuck, like does not feel good. That can be HSV too, even when you're not having an outbreak. And we've also had it connected to things like endometriosis and other like pelvic issues, because that's where a lot of the virus will reside, is in the lower body. So HSV2 is not just about the actual outbreaks, it's affecting the nerve and the autonomic nervous system. So if you have that and you deal with anxiety, dysautonomia, those types of things, those are absolutely connected. So maybe that's news you didn't know. HSV3, it's called varicella, but this is your chickenpox or shingles, right? Chickenpox as a kid, shingles as an adult. This becomes more problematic if you are somebody who gets reoccurring shingles. So if you have, but even if you've just had it once, it means it's in your body. But if you've had it more, right, it means you have a really heavy viral load. So if you are somebody who has struggled with shingles, here are some other things I want you looking out for. Rashes that are not even shingles related, right? So if you get weird rashes, or when you're stressed, you get a rash, or if you eat something weird and you think it might be histamines or mast cells, it could be the HSV3 virus flaring up in your system. Neuralgia. This is a big one. They call it post-viral neuralgia. Post-herpetic neuralgia is you have shingles, but then the pain never goes away. So it can be shoulder pain, it can be neck pain. Sometimes it can be like a burning pain in those areas. A lot of times with shingles, the nerve root is down the neck, the shoulder and the shoulder blade, and down the arm, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a lot of different places, like a burning type nerve pain that doesn't always go away and isn't only there when you have shingles. You will feel it on and off throughout because the nerves stay irritated even when you're not in a flare. So having that post-neuralgic, post-hepatic nerve type pain is really, really common with somebody who has HSV3. Chronic sensitivities and itching. I didn't even realize this one, but people would be like, I'm itchy all the time. I can't figure it out. Certain clothes really bother me. They thought it was sensitivities. They thought it was allergies. It could be HSV3, the same one that gets in those nerve roots. It creates more of that skin sensation, that irritability, the itching. That could be HSV3. So thinking about these things in different terms if you get those types of symptoms or issues. And then most of the herpes viruses will have this too, but specifically HSV3 and HSV4, increased pain with stress, right? So when your nerves are already irritated, when you get stressed or you're busy or you're overtired or you're not sleeping good, your pain gets magnified, right? And we're not talking like I'm achy because I'm tired. If you've had this feeling, you know exactly what I mean. It's like, I am in so much pain when I get stressed. My body flares completely. That's really common of both HSV3, which is your varicella, chickenpox, and shingles, and HSV4, which is Epstein-Barr virus. Now, Epstein-Barr virus is the one I am most passionate about because this is my root cause. I actually went 20 years with an undiagnosed Epstein-Barr infection and had majority of the symptoms I'm going to go over with you, and I had no idea. It is also one of the things I'm finding more and more when people struggle with chronic health issues, mystery symptoms. Epstein-Barr virus is at the root a lot of those times. And unfortunately, when you have one herpes virus like Epstein-Barr, it does make it more probable, right, that the other ones stay in your system. So I often notice someone who has Epstein-Barr ends up later on dealing with long-term shingles, or they end up getting cold sores because it really allows the other ones to take root as well. But Epstein-Barr in particular has been linked directly to fibromyalgia. That's what I had for 20 years. It's been linked to chronic fatigue syndrome. It's been linked to MS, which is multiple sclerosis. It's been linked to Hashimoto's. It's been linked to lupus and RA. It's been linked to dysautonomia. It's been linked to all of these conditions that are running rampant right now because Epstein-Barr virus gets in all the nerve roots. So where HSV1, it really is the head, where HSV2, it's the lower body and the genitals, where the HSV3 is usually like your upper nerve roots. Epstein-Barr gets everywhere. So it can irritate the head and give you all those same symptoms and dizziness and ringing in the ears. It can get in the nervous system tissue of the muscles and cause chronic pain and heaviness. It can get in the digestive tract. It can get in the liver. It can get in the thyroid, which is why it triggers Hashimoto's. Epstein-Barr is stealthy. And in my opinion, it's the one that causes majority of those symptoms. In addition to that, the list that they give is chronic fatigue is a big one. Memory issues. We see a lot of memory issues like short-term memory loss, or I really should remember that. It should be easy to me. Epstein-Barr is a big kind of zapper of brain function. Muscle and joint pain, but that moves around the body. So sometimes it's one place, but it's another place other times, and then it moves somewhere else, and it's never really consistent, and it kind of comes in waves and comes in ebbs and flows. That's classic of Epstein-Barr. Swollen lymph nodes, especially in different areas of the body. Like sometimes it's in your neck, sometimes it's in your groin, then you feel a lymph node in your armpit. Epstein-Barr gets everywhere, which is why it can move around, which makes it really hard to pinpoint in the medical community, right? Because traditional medicine wants an exact like ball of symptoms, right? Like these 4 things mean that you have Epstein-Barr. But because Epstein-Barr is so stealthy, it doesn't always work that way, right? Symptoms change, they move around. So anytime symptoms don't make sense, I'm pretty sure that's Epstein-Barr, right? Anything weird, we're thinking Epstein-Barr. And then in particular, dysautonomia, because of how Epstein-Barr affects the vagus nerve, which affects everything, your heart rate, your digestion, your mood, your anxiety, all of these things that are directly related to dysautonomia. It's Epstein-Barr irritating those nerve roots. Most times that's what I find when somebody is dealing with those types of symptoms. So that's herpes simplex virus 4, and it is the one I believe is probably the root cause. And if you have more than one of these at a time, they just amplify each other, right? They make your symptoms heavier and worse. So highly recommend investigating if you have Epstein-Barr or not. The problem with Epstein-Barr is like, if you have HSV1, you get cold sores. If you have HSV2, you've had an outbreak. If you have HSV3, you've had shingles. With Epstein-Barr, there isn't an outward presentation, right? There's no way to really know. You just feel terrible. Everything happens in the body. So that is when you would want a blood test. Now, I have lots of videos on here telling you exactly what to test for, what those blood tests need to look like, and how to interpret them. So go back and watch those. But to truly know if you have Epstein-Barr or not, it needs to be properly tested through a blood test because there is no external symptom that you have it. HSV5. And HSV is also sometimes known as HHV, human herpes virus, or human herpes simplex virus, right? They're kind of interchangeable. So HSV5 is cytomegalovirus. This is another one that's a little bit less common. Epstein-Barr is much more common. Cytomegalovirus gives similar symptoms to Epstein-Barr. It's, again, another one you would need a blood test for. But the bigger one with cytomegalovirus is muscle. It tends to really be more muscle. So if you get muscle fatigue, walking up the stairs, you feel like my muscles are just exhausted all the time, not being able to build lean muscle very easily. Cytomegalovirus does that pretty often. And then also just it really weakens the immune system. So feeling like you get sick or you don't rebound quick, that's very consistent with cytomegalovirus. And again, often you'll see it kind of paired with Epstein-Barr as well. So that heaviness feeling, the muscle weakness, exhaustion is a big one. And sometimes those symptoms can mirror each other between Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus, which is why you'd want to test to make sure you know which one. But also, thankfully, the process to manage both is quite similar because they're both herpes viruses. So it's not like if you were doing a protocol for one, it was the wrong thing for the other. It's just good for you to know which one you have, or if you have both, right? If you have multiple, it's good to know because then you can understand the heavier your viral load is, the longer it probably takes to stabilize it, right? So just so you can get realistic expectations, the more of these that are positive, it's just going to take more work to calm them down. Okay, I know this is a lot, but I promise it's important. The next one is HSV6 or HHV6. This one is interesting. They just call it the autoimmune herpes virus because it has been linked when people are positive for HSV6 to chronic fatigue syndrome. It's been linked to multiple autoimmune activations, especially just like a weird positive ANA when they don't know what it's linked to. Most people test positive for HSV6. Lupus, RA, MS again, Hashimoto's, big autoimmune conditions have been linked to this HSV6. And that's all they call it, is the autoimmune herpes virus. Yet we're so nobody talks about this one. And it's a big deal for people who have autoimmune. Autoimmune is on the rise everywhere. And we know this virus can trigger it, but rarely are we ever being told that. Highly recommend if you have autoimmune or you have autoimmune type symptoms, you check for that one as well. Another kind of calling card of HSV6 is mood issues, anxiety and depression because of the way that it inflames the brain. Mood issues are really common with that one. Nervous system inflammation, which also causes anxiety and depression. We also see a lot of sleep disturbance in HSV6. versus Epstein-Barr, it's more like, even when I sleep, I'm exhausted. I can sleep 8 hours and still be tired. With HSV6, we see more like, I can't sleep. My sleep patterns are off. I'm waking a lot, like having a really disturbed sleep is usually how I differentiate Epstein-Barr from HSV6. And again, you could have both, right? It could be both at the same time. HSV7, there's a lot less known about HSV7. It actually doesn't even have a name. It's just HSV7. They do say it does create immune dysregulation, just like the other ones. It typically comes along with HSV6. They think they pair together, or Epstein-Barr. It's rarely found on its own. So I think it's kind of like a piggyback virus that just makes the other ones worse. But usually it's co-infected with Epstein-Barr or HSV6. And then HSV8 is specifically known as Kaposi's sarcoma. There is a very specific sarcoma that comes from that virus alone. So you would know if you had that one because it's directly related to that. So with all that being said, there are 8 different forms of herpes viruses, and they cause some of the most common symptoms that I see when somebody has chronic illness, when they have autoimmune, and most people are not told to investigate, or they're told to look at one, or that it's no big deal, or it was a past infection. But I want you to know everything I just listed off for you happens with the past infection titers. This is not while you're in the active flare. This is not when you're in the active outbreak. It's when that virus builds and builds and gets stronger, even though it just looks like a past infection. Where we really missed the boat is the past infection creates the chronic symptoms. So taking that seriously. Now, there are a lot of things you can do to start managing that. One of the trickiest things, and why herpes viruses are so hard to deal with, is they're called an enveloped viruses. Not all viruses are enveloped viruses, but the envelope is like a protective layer. It's a coating, it's a shell that protects the virus so that it can literally hide in your body, in your nerve roots, and it can't get killed off, so it stays there forever. So one of the most important things, although there is no cure for these viruses, this is not curative, but in order to keep your viral load down and protect your body as best as you can from having those long-term chronic issues, you need to do 2 things. The first one is something to help dissolve that coating, right? We need to dissolve the envelope so we can actually get the virus to calm down. One of the only agents that is known to be able to do that is called monolaurin. Monolaurin is derived from coconut. There's a ingredient in there called lauric acid. The lauric acid is what dissolves the outer protection on all herpes viruses. So if you have any of those 8, monolaurin helps dissolve the outer layer. Once the outer layer is dissolved, then you need another agent to go in and act as your antiviral. That's where lysine comes in. Lysine is the most researched antiviral, herbal, or like natural antiviral on the planet. We know it works. We know it's good. We know it's generally well tolerated. But lysine needs monolaurin to open the cell first so it can get in and actually work to slow and stop the viral replication. Again, this does not eradicate it fully from the body, but we're lowering the viral load so that the body can maintain in homeostasis and hopefully prevent having those long-term issues. So those things paired together help decrease the viral load. I also highly recommend, if you have a chronic illness, any of those 8 or combination of those 8, it ends up turning into something called T cell exhaustion. This happens to your immune system. When your immune system has to fight off a virus every day, all day, with any of those viruses, it gets tired. Like, you don't like to fight things all day, every day. It's like if you have a kid that you have to fight every day, all day. By the end of the day, you're like, I'm exhausted. We fought all day. Your body feels the same way about these viruses. So in addition to actually working on decreasing the virus, you have to support your immune system, but you have to support it knowing that you have a chronic virus. Most of your general immune system supports that you get on the market are not targeted for the person with T cell exhaustion, and they are not targeted for the person with a chronic viral load. Looking for things like astragalus, which helps strengthen your white blood cells, beta-glucans, which helps protect and retrain the nervous system. Medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane are fantastic. They actually help protect the brain and the nervous system as well. I love shatavari, is one of my favorite herbs if you're going to want to support the viral load in the body. Camu camu is a whole food source of vitamin C that helps. All of those are really supportive and target a viral load. So I always pair a good immune system support with monolaurin and lysine. Now you can find those together. I'll put a link below. It's called my Epstein-Barr support bundle because I have Epstein-Barr, but it is good for any of the things we just mentioned, right? Any of those herpes viruses to manage the actual viral load, and then make sure that your immune system is safely supported so it can keep up that fight and not become exhausted. I also share tons of other tips on here about how to properly eat and take care of your body, what things you need to do if you have a chronic virus, because I believe that even though there is no cure, right, there is hope. You can be a perfectly healthy person. I'm living proof, right? I've had Epstein-Barr for over 20 years and I'm able to manage it properly, that I fully live my life. And I believe the same for you. And I love sharing those tips, what works for me. So hopefully you can implement them and use them for yourself. And the Epstein-Barr bundle is one of the things that I rely on heavily. And I've tried hundreds of different things to help with my viral load. This is what actually works. So I hope that it works for you too. Leave some comments below. Let me know if you learned something. Is this new information for you? And then keep following along for lots more education.